Quinn's morning routine always included opening the windows of her small pet shop to let in fresh air while cleaning the cages. Her beloved African grey parrot, Max, would watch the street activity from his perch near the window, occasionally mimicking the sounds of passing cars or greeting customers with a cheerful "hello." That scorching summer day started like any other. Quinn was organizing new inventory when Max suddenly began squawking loudly, something he rarely did without reason. His agitation grew more intense as he flapped his wings and repeatedly screamed, "Baby! Baby!" in a distressed voice. Quinn rushed to the window, confused by Max's unusual behavior. The parrot continued his frantic calls, now mixing in sounds of a baby crying, another sound he had learned to mimic perfectly. Following Max's focused gaze, Quinn spotted a luxury SUV parked across the street, its windows rolled up tight despite the sweltering heat. Her heart nearly stopped when she noticed movement inside the vehicle, tiny hands reaching up from a car seat in the back. A baby was trapped inside the car, alone in the baking sun. Quinn immediately called emergency services while running outside to check on the situation. The baby's face was red and sweaty, clearly in distress from the heat. She tried the door handles, but everything was locked tight. Other passers-by began to gather, drawn by the commotion and Max's continued alarmed calls from the shop window. Time seemed to crawl as they waited for help to arrive. The baby's movements were becoming more sluggish, and Quinn felt helpless watching the little one suffer. Just then, she heard Max making a new sound, a perfect imitation of a car alarm, which drew even more attention to the situation. Through the growing crowd, a man in medical scrubs pushed his way forward. "I'm a doctor," he announced, quickly assessing the situation. "This baby needs help immediately. In this heat, we don't have much time." The sound of approaching sirens filled the air, but the baby's condition was deteriorating rapidly. They had to act fast, but no one knew who owned the car or where the parents were. The next few moments would prove crucial as Max continued his desperate warning calls from the shop window, refusing to stay quiet until help arrived. Quinn never imagined her ordinary morning would turn into such a race against time, with her beloved parrot trying desperately to save a stranger's child. But as she watched the gathering crowd and heard the approaching emergency vehicles, she realized this was just the beginning of an extraordinary chain of events that would change multiple lives forever. Officer Timothy arrived at the scene first, his police cruiser's sirens cutting through the humid air. The crowd parted as he rushed forward, his experienced eyes quickly taking in the situation. The baby in the car was now barely moving, their small face flushed an alarming shade of red. "Stand back," Timothy ordered, pulling out his baton. He'd handled similar situations before and knew every second counted. The doctor who had arrived earlier, William, stepped forward. "Officer, the baby's showing signs of severe heat exhaustion. We need to get them out now." Just as Timothy prepared to break the window, a woman's scream pierced the air. "Hi, my baby!" Helena burst through the crowd, shopping bags dropping from her hands, her face a mask of horror. Behind her, Ryan, the baby's father, fumbled with his car keys, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold them. "I thought you had the baby," Helena cried, turning to Ryan. "No, you said you were taking them with you," he responded, panic evident in his voice. Timothy didn't waste time on the blame game. "Keys, now," he demanded. Ryan finally managed to press the unlock button, and Quinn immediately yanked the door open, letting in a rush of relatively cooler air. William pushed past her, reaching for the listless infant. "Get me cool water and towels," he ordered, carefully lifting the baby from the car seat. The child's skin was hot to the touch, their clothes soaked with sweat. Quinn ran back to her shop, where Max was still making distressed sounds, though quieter now that help had arrived. When she returned with water and the cleanest towels she could find, William had laid the baby on a blanket someone from the crowd had provided. Laura, a nurse who had also been passing by, knelt beside him, helping to carefully cool the infant down. Helena stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, while Ryan paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair repeatedly. The crowd watched in tense silence as William and Laura worked to help the overheated baby. "The ambulance is 3 minutes out," Timothy announced, keeping the crowd back to give the medical professionals space to work. Quinn noticed Noah, one of her regular customers, filming everything on his phone. She wanted to tell him to stop, but then realized this might be important evidence. Max's calls had changed now, mimicking the sound of the approaching ambulance before it was actually audible to human ears. The Parrot's earlier warning had been crucial. Without it, who knows how much longer the baby would have been trapped in the sweltering car. As the paramedics arrived and took over the baby's care, William pulled Helena and Ryan aside. His voice was stern but compassionate. "Your baby has heat exhaustion, possibly progressing to heat stroke. They need immediate hospital care, but I want you to know, you're very lucky. If it wasn't for that Parrot raising the alarm when it did, this could have been much worse." Helena's legs gave out, and she would have fallen if Ryan hadn't caught her. The reality of what had almost happened was sinking in. Their simple miscommunication about who had the baby could have ended in tragedy. "The Parrot?" Ryan asked, confused. Quinn explained how Max had noticed the baby and alerted everyone with his calls. Helena turned to look at the pet shop window, where Max was now quietly watching the scene unfold. As the paramedics prepared to transport the baby to the hospital, Officer Timothy approached the parents. His expression was grave. "I need both of you to come down to the station after you've been to the hospital. We need to take statements and discuss this incident." The crowd began to disperse as the ambulance pulled away, its sirens once again causing Max to mimic the sound. Quinn returned to her shop, her heart still racing from the events that had just unfolded. She gave Max a few extra treats, tears in her eyes as she thought about what might have happened if he hadn't been so persistent with his warning. But the story was far from over. As Quinn would soon discover, this incident would set off a chain of events that would bring unexpected changes to many lives, including her own. Max's heroic alert had not only saved a baby, but would also uncover secrets that had been hidden for years. Noah approached Quinn's shop just as she was about to close for lunch. His phone was still in his hand, and his expression was troubled. "Quinn, I think you need to see something," he said, his voice low and serious. "When I was filming earlier, I captured something in the background, something that doesn't make sense." Quinn invited him in, curious about what he had noticed. As Max watched from his perch, Noah played back the video he had recorded. At first, Quinn didn't notice anything unusual, just the scene she had witnessed earlier. But then Noah pointed to a figure in the background, partially hidden behind a parked car. "Oh, watch this person," he said, rewinding the video slightly. "They're watching everything happen, but look at their reaction when the parents show up." Quinn leaned closer, studying the grainy footage. The mysterious figure seemed to straighten up when Helena and Ryan appeared, then quickly disappeared into the crowd. Something about their behavior seemed off, almost as if they had been waiting for the parents to arrive. "There's more," Noah continued, his voice even lower. "I did some quick research. There have been 3 other incidents in the past month in this area, all involving children left in cars. All of them were rescued before any tragedy occurred. But..." Quinn felt a chill run down her spine despite the summer heat. Could this be more than just a terrible accident? Max, as if sensing the tension, began to make soft, worried sounds from his perch. The implications were disturbing. What had started as a dramatic rescue might be unraveling into something far more complex and sinister. Quinn looked at Max, who had saved a life today with his warning calls, and wondered what other roles they might have to play in whatever was about to unfold. Quinn couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled over her since Noah showed her the video. She spent the evening after closing the shop reviewing security footage from her own cameras, looking for anything suspicious. Max watched from his perch, occasionally mimicking the sound of rewinding tape as she worked. The pet shop's cameras had captured something interesting. The mysterious figure Noah had noticed had actually passed by the shop several times before the incident, always pausing to look at the parked SUV. In one frame, they appeared to be writing something down. Quinn was so absorbed in the footage that she almost missed the knock at her shop's back door. It was Officer Timothy, looking tired but determined. "Sorry to bother you after hours," he said, "but we need to talk." Inside, Timothy revealed why he'd come. "The parents and stories don't match up," he explained, his voice low as if the walls might be listening. "Orion claims Helena was supposed to take the baby to the doctor. Helena says Ryan was meant to drop the baby at daycare, but here's the thing, we called both places. Neither was expecting the baby today. Max suddenly let out a perfect imitation of a baby crying, making them both jump. Quinn had never seen the parrot so agitated, even during the rescue. He kept shifting on his perch, his feathers slightly ruffled. There's something else, Timothy continued, pulling out his notebook. Those other incidents Noah found. We looked into them. In each case, the parents had similar contradictory stories, and in each case, someone called in the emergency just in time. Quinn felt her skin prickle. You think someone's orchestrating this, but why would anyone deliberately put babies in danger? That's what we need to figure out, Timothy replied. And we think your shop's location might be key. It's central to where all the incidents happened. He spread out a map on Quinn's counter, marking the locations of each incident with a red dot. When connected, they formed an almost perfect circle around the downtown area. Quinn leaned closer, noticing something else. These are all near expensive shopping areas, she pointed out, places where people might leave their cars for a while. Timothy nodded grimly. We've got officers reviewing security footage from all these locations, but your shop has the best view of where today's incident happened. And then there's Max. The parrot perked up at his name, tilting his head as if listening. Timothy watched him thoughtfully. Birds are incredibly observant. They notice patterns, changes in routine. Max might have seen something important without us realizing it. As if in response, Max suddenly began mimicking a series of sounds. A car door closing, footsteps, another car door, then silence. Quinn and Timothy exchanged looks. He's been doing that all evening, Quinn said. I thought he was just processing what happened, but... Timothy pulled out his phone and played a recording of the ambient sounds from the incident. Max immediately became more animated, repeating his sequence of sounds with greater urgency. Quinn, would you be willing to help us? Timothy asked. We need someone here watching, someone who knows the neighborhood and its routines. And Max, well, he's already proven himself to be an exceptional witness. Before Quinn could respond, the shop's front door chimed. Someone had triggered the after-hours sensor. Through the darkened storefront, they could see Helena standing outside alone, her face streaked with tears. Timothy moved to open the door, but Quinn grabbed his arm. Something wasn't right. Helena had been at the hospital with her baby. Why would she be here now, and where was Ryan? Max suddenly went completely silent, which was unusual for him. His attention was fixed on something outside, beyond where Helena stood. Quinn followed his gaze and noticed a shadow moving in the alley across the street. Timothy had seen it too. He quietly called for backup, while Quinn tried to keep Helena in view without making it obvious they'd noticed her. The woman kept glancing over her shoulder, her hands fidgeting with her purse strap. She's afraid, Quinn whispered. Look at how she keeps checking behind her. Max suddenly broke his silence with a new sound, a perfect imitation of Ryan's voice from earlier. You said you were taking them. The parrot repeated it, but this time Quinn noticed something she'd missed before. The tone wasn't panicked or accusatory. It was almost rehearsed. Timothy's phone buzzed silently. Backup was in position. He motioned for Quinn to stay back as he approached the door. But before he could reach it, Helena's eyes went wide with fear. She turned and ran, disappearing into the darkness. Seconds later, they heard the squeal of tires as a car sped away from the alley. Timothy rushed outside, but both Helena and the mysterious shadow were gone. When he returned, his face was grim. This is bigger than we thought, he said. That wasn't a random visit. She was being forced to come here. Quinn sank into a chair, her mind racing. The baby. Is it okay? Still at the hospital? Timothy nodded. Safe and recovering. But now I'm wondering if these incidents aren't just about putting babies in danger. What if they're about the parents? Max chose that moment to make another sound, the click of a camera shutter. Quinn had never taught him that one. The figure in Noah's video, she gasped. They were taking pictures, not of the rescue, but of the parents, Timothy finished. Psych, their reactions, their behavior under stress. He pulled out his phone again, dialing quickly. We need protection at the hospital, now. Quinn looked at Max, who had returned to making the sequence of car door sounds. "What are you trying to tell us?" she wondered aloud. The parrot's behavior suggested he'd witnessed something significant, but translating his clues into useful information wouldn't be easy. As Timothy coordinated with other officers, Quinn began writing down every sound Max had made since the incident, trying to create a timeline. There had to be a pattern, a reason why these specific locations were chosen, why these particular families were targeted. What she didn't know was that the answer would come from an unexpected source, and it would shake their community to its core. The next 24 hours would reveal a conspiracy that went far beyond endangered babies in hot cars, and Max's role in uncovering it was far from over. Timothy hung up his phone and turned to Quinn with a serious expression. The hospital just reported something strange. When they ran the baby's blood work, they found traces of a mild sedative, not enough to be dangerous, but enough to make a baby sleep through the heat longer than normal. Quinn felt sick. This wasn't just about staging accidents or testing parents' reactions. Someone was actively drugging infants. But why? What could possibly be worth risking innocent lives? Max suddenly flew to the window, his wings spreading wide as he made a new sound, the distinct click of high heels on pavement, followed by the beep of a car's keyless entry system. Quinn remembered hearing those exact sounds earlier that day, before the incident. "He's giving us a timeline," she realized. "Max, can you do it again? All the sounds you heard in order." As the parrot began his performance, Quinn and Timothy listened intently, each sound another piece of a puzzle they were only beginning to understand. But they had no idea that the truth would be more disturbing than anything they could imagine, or that their investigation would soon put them all, Quinn, Timothy, Max, and even the mysterious Helena, in terrible danger. The next morning brought rain, turning the summer heat into a sticky, uncomfortable humidity. Quinn opened her shop early, unable to sleep after the previous night's revelations. Max was unusually quiet, watching the rain streak down the windows while Quinn set up a board behind the counter, mapping out everything they knew so far. Noah arrived just after opening, shaking water from his umbrella. His face was pale, and he clutched his phone like a lifeline. "You need to see this," he said, his voice shaking. "I've been going through the footage I took yesterday, frame by frame. There's something about Helena, something familiar." He pulled up a close-up screenshot on his phone. In it, Helena was reaching for her dropped shopping bags, and her sleeve had pulled back slightly. On her wrist was a distinctive bracelet with a medical alert tag. "I knew I'd seen that bracelet before," Noah explained. "My sister works at Memorial Hospital. All their clinical trial participants wear them. They're electronic. They monitor heart rate, blood pressure, stress levels." Quinn felt her stomach drop. "Clinical trials? What kind of trials?" Noah shook his head. "That's just it. I asked my sister, but she says there aren't any official trials running right now. The program was suspended after some ethics concerns." Max suddenly began making a new sound, the rustle of paper bags, followed by the distinct click of pills in a bottle. Quinn had heard those sounds yesterday, when Helena dropped her shopping bags. "The sedatives in the baby's blood work," Quinn whispered. "They must have come from somewhere." Before Noah could respond, the shop's door chimed again. William, the doctor who had helped save the baby, walked in. He looked exhausted, his scrubs wrinkled as if he'd been wearing them all night. "I hoped you'd be open," he said to Quinn. "There's something not right about this whole situation. I've been up all night reviewing similar cases from other hospitals. The patterns, they're too perfect." He spread several medical files on Quinn's counter, carefully hiding the patients' names but showing the test results. "Look at these readings: heart rate, blood pressure, cortisol levels. In every case, the parents show almost identical stress responses." "It's like they're being tested," Quinn finished. "But why? What's the point of all this?" Max suddenly flew to his favorite perch near the window, making an agitated sound. Outside, a black SUV had parked across the street, in the exact same spot where the incident had occurred yesterday. William's face went pale. "That car? I've seen it before. At the hospital parking lot late at night. I thought it was just someone visiting patients, but..." Noah was already filming with his phone, capturing the vehicle's license plate. The windows were tinted dark, making it impossible to see inside. Quinn reached for her phone to call Timothy, but before she could dial, Max let out a warning screech. The back door of the SUV opened and Helena stepped out. She looked different now, composed, professional, wearing a lab coat. She walked purposefully toward the shop. "Hide," Quinn hissed to Noah and William, gesturing toward the storage room. She didn't know why, but every instinct told her this wasn't a friendly visit. As Helena entered the shop, Quinn noticed she wasn't alone. 2 men in suits followed her, their expressions cold and businesslike. Max fell completely silent, but his eyes tracked every movement. "Ms. Quinn," Helena said, her voice entirely different from yesterday, crisp, authoritative. "We need to discuss what you think you saw yesterday, and more importantly, what you plan to do with that information." Quinn's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "Your baby, is it okay?" A flicker of something, guilt, fear, crossed Helena's face before her professional mask returned. "There was no baby. At least, not my baby. We borrowed it, with the parents' consent, for a necessary study." "A study?" Quinn felt sick. "You deliberately put a baby in danger for a study?" "Not in danger," one of the suited men interrupted. "Everything was carefully controlled. The sedative was mild. The car's temperature was monitored. Emergency services were on standby. We needed authentic reactions from the public, natural responses to a crisis." "Why?" Quinn demanded, her anger overriding her fear. Helena glanced at her companions before answering. "We're developing a new emergency response system, one that predicts how people will react in crisis situations. The data we've gathered, the videos, the medical readings, the psychological profiles, they're helping us create something revolutionary. By traumatizing innocent people, by drugging babies." Quinn couldn't keep the disgust from her voice. "You don't understand the bigger picture," Helena said, taking a step forward. "What we learn from these controlled incidents will help us save countless lives in the future. We can predict panic responses, prevent mass hysteria, guide emergency services more effectively." She trailed off as Max suddenly began playing back her words from yesterday. Her fake panic, her rehearsed shock. The contrast between those sounds and her current demeanor was chilling. "That bird," the second suited man said sharply. "It's becoming a problem. Its interference yesterday nearly compromised months of careful planning." Quinn moved protectively toward Max's perch. "He saved a baby's life." "A baby that was never in real danger," Helena insisted. "But now, thanks to your pet's disruption and your friend's video evidence, we have to shut down the entire program. Unless—" She placed a thick envelope on the counter. "We're prepared to compensate you generously for your silence. You, the officer, the young man with the phone, everyone involved. All we ask is that you forget what you've seen." Quinn stared at the envelope, remembering the terror on people's faces yesterday, the real panic and pain they'd experienced. In the storage room, she knew Noah was still filming, capturing every word of this conversation. But Helena and her companions didn't know that. They also didn't know about William, who as a doctor would understand better than anyone the ethical implications of their study. And they certainly didn't know that Quinn had pressed the silent alarm button under her counter the moment they'd entered. Max chose that moment to make a new sound, police sirens, growing louder. But this time, it wasn't just an imitation. Through the rain-streaked windows, Quinn could see real police cars approaching, their lights flashing. Helena's professional mask cracked. "What did you do?" Before Quinn could answer, the back door of the shop burst open. Timothy led a team of officers in car, their weapons drawn. "Nobody move," he ordered. "Helena Martinez, you and your colleagues are under arrest for child endangerment, medical malpractice, and conspiracy." The suited men reached for weapons, but froze when they realized they were outnumbered. Helena looked around wildly, as if seeking an escape route. "Don't," Quinn said quietly. "Enough people have been hurt by your bug study." As the police led them away, William emerged from the storage room, already on his phone with the medical board, reporting what he'd witnessed. Noah followed, his phone's camera still recording everything. Quinn sat heavily in her chair, the adrenaline draining away. Max flew to her shoulder, gently preening her hair as he often did when she was upset. "Good bird," she whispered, reaching up to stroke his feathers. Try the very best, bird. But even as Helena and her colleagues were taken into custody, Quinn couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The scale of their operation, the resources they had access to, there had to be more to the story. And somewhere out there were the real parents of the baby from yesterday, possibly unaware that their child had been used in such a cruel experiment. The rain continued to fall outside, washing away the last traces of yesterday's heat, but the questions it left behind would take much longer to clear. Quinn looked at the board where she'd mapped out their investigation, knowing she would need to add many more pieces to this puzzle before the full truth would emerge. Max made a soft, questioning sound, and Quinn realized he was mimicking the baby's cry again. But this time, it seemed more like a question. Where was the real baby? And how many other families had been unknowingly drawn into this twisted research? The answers would come soon enough, but they would bring with them a whole new set of challenges and revelations that nobody, not Quinn, not Timothy, not even clever Max, could have anticipated. Part 5. Timothy returned to Quinn's shop later that evening with news that made her blood run cold. The investigation had uncovered a deeper truth. Helena wasn't just part of an unauthorized study. She was a grieving mother who had lost her own baby to a hot car incident years ago. She became obsessed with understanding why these accidents happen, Timothy explained, his voice heavy. She worked her way up in medical research, gathered a team, and started staging these incidents, all to study how people react, how tragedies could be prevented. But she ended up causing the very trauma she wanted to prevent, Quinn said softly. Max, listening from his perch, made a sad, cooing sound. The real parents of the baby from yesterday had been found. They were a young couple who had enrolled their child in what they thought was a legitimate medical study about infant sleep patterns. They had no idea their baby would be put in danger. When they learned the truth, they were horrified but also grateful. Grateful for Max's intervention, for Quinn's quick thinking, for everyone who had helped save their child. Part 6. In the days that followed, the full scope of Helena's operation came to light. Her research team had conducted similar mod experiments in other cities, always careful to avoid detection. They had gathered extensive data on human behavior during crises, all in the name of prevention. But their methods had crossed an unforgivable line. As William testified before the medical board, the desire to prevent tragedy never justifies creating new victims. The case attracted national attention. News crews gathered outside Quinn's shop, hoping to catch footage of the heroic Parrot. Max, unimpressed by his newfound fame, continued his daily routines. Though he now had a new habit, whenever he heard a baby cry, he would look to Quinn for reassurance that everything was okay. Noah's video evidence proved crucial in securing convictions. Helena and her team faced serious charges, but during the trial, a moment of unexpected grace occurred. The parents of the baby Max had saved spoke on Helena's behalf, not to excuse her actions, but to acknowledge the pain that had driven her. Part 7. As summer faded into autumn, life at Quinn's pet shop settled into a new normal. The story of Max's heroism had an unexpected effect. People began bringing their pets to Quinn for training, hoping she could teach them to be as observant and protective as Max. "You can't train that," Quinn would explain. "It comes from love and trust. Max helped because he cares about people, and because he knows he's safe to speak up when something's wrong." Timothy became a regular visitor to the shop, often bringing updates about new safety measures being implemented in parking lots across the city. William helped develop a legitimate research program about preventing hot car incidents, one that respected ethical boundaries while working toward real solutions. The baby's parents named Quinn and Max as honorary godparents, bringing their child to visit regularly. Max would perform his repertoire of sounds for the laughing infant, though he never again had to raise the alarm about a baby in danger. One quiet evening, as Quinn was closing up shop, she found a letter had been slipped under her door. It was from Helena, written from prison. "Your Parrot did what I should have done years ago," she wrote. "He saw someone in danger and simply acted to help. I got lost in the research, in the data, in trying to make sense of my own loss. I forgot that sometimes the simplest solution is also the most human, to pay attention, to care, to act." Quinn read the letter to Max, who listened with his head tilted. When she finished, he made a new sound, the gentle laughter of a happy baby, mixed with the soft rustle of turning pages. It was his way of saying that their story, though difficult, had found its proper ending. The incident changed their community in lasting ways. People became more vigilant, more willing to speak up when they saw something wrong. They learned that heroes come in all forms, even feathered ones, and that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply pay attention to the world around us. Years later, Quinn would still find people stopping by her shop just to thank Max, to tell him their own stories of times they'd stepped in to help others in need. The parrot's warning had not only saved a life, it had reminded an entire community of their shared responsibility to protect their most vulnerable members. And Max, he continued his watch from his window perch, keeping an eye on the street below, ready to raise the alarm if needed. But more often than not, his calls were simply greetings to familiar faces, his repertoire now including not just sounds of emergency, but also those of everyday joy, children laughing, friends chatting, and the peaceful buzz of a community that had learned to look out for one another. Quinn often reflected on how a single moment of attention from her beloved parrot had unveiled a complex web of pain, healing, and redemption. The story could have ended in tragedy, but instead, it became a testament to the power of speaking up, of paying attention, of acting with compassion rather than calculation. "Good bird," she would tell Max each evening as she closed the shop, and he would respond with his newest sound, the soft whisper of thank you he had learned from the countless visitors who came to express their gratitude. It was a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary acts come from the simplest of intentions, the desire to help, to protect, to care. In the end, that was what Max had done, and what he had taught them all to do better. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.